All right, I know that we've already talked about this video that had a bunch of Democratic lawmakers, folks that were either military background or intelligence backgrounds that posted last week urging active duty U.S. service members and personnel and intelligence community members to refuse any, quote, illegal orders from the current administration. Now, inside of that message, they were trying to emphasize that service members have a duty to disobey unlawful commands, and they cited historical precedents like the Nuremberg trials, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and then Senator Mark Kelly specifically drew on his experience of flying 39 combat missions in Operation Desert Storm, framing that as a reminder of ethical obligations rather than a direct call to insubordination. Now, while they didn't say directly to disobey orders, the video drew a lot of backlash from the current administration, from President Donald Trump, from Secretary of War Pete Hegseth, from a lot of conservatives, with the president labeling it as seditious behavior at the highest level, accusing them of treason, suggesting that it was punishable in some way. And then the Secretary of War kind of echoed that on X, calling the remarks despicable, reckless, and false, and also accusing Senator Kelly of undermining military morale and the chain of command. Now, on November 24th of 2025, the Pentagon recently renamed the establishment Department of War, issued a statement announcing a thorough review of, quote, serious allegations of misconduct against Kelly, and then they referred to as a retired officer still subject to the UCMJ under 10 USC paragraph 688. Kelly could be recalled to active duty for court-martial or administrative action. The statement stressed that retirees remain accountable for actions interfering with military discipline, and it reminded service members that orders are presumed lawful unless proven otherwise. Now, some people thought that this move was unusual, saying that it was recalling a sitting U.S. senator to active duty for prosecution would be like an unprecedented thing and could face a lot of legal hurdles, including challenges over due process, separations of powers, and the statute of limitations for certain UCMJ offenses. Now, so far, the only person that I've seen the Pentagon refer to specifically in trying to call back to active duty was Senator Kelly. I think it's because he's still in the inactive reserve. I'm not 100% sure, but apparently Kelly's the only participant who's eligible for such recall, as the others were fully separated from service and are no longer in the inactive ready reserve. Now, some people are saying that the investigation could lead to charges under federal laws like 18 USC paragraph 2387, which prohibits interference with military loyalty, or UCMJ articles on sedition or disobedience. Now, Senator Kelly responded in a statement highlighting his service record, including 4 space shuttle missions, and vowing not to, quote, be silenced by bullies who care more about their own power than protecting the Constitution, end quote. He argued that the video was a lawful reminder of military oaths, not incitement, and suggested the probe was political intimidation amid some broader administration purges at the Pentagon. But in any case, the official statement from the Department of War X account was as follows. They said, quote, official statement, the Department of War has received serious allegations of misconduct against Captain Mark Kelly, U.S. Navy retired. In accordance with the Uniform Code of Military Justice 10 USC 688 and other applicable regulations, a thorough review of these allegations has been initiated to determine further actions, which may include recall to active duty for court-martial proceedings or administrative measures. This matter will be handled in compliance with military law, ensuring due process and impartiality. Further official comments will be limited to preserve the integrity of proceedings. The Department of War reminds all individuals that military retirees remain subject to the UCMJ for applicable offenses, and federal laws such as 18 USC 2387 prohibit actions intended to interfere with the loyalty, morale, or good order and discipline of the armed forces. Any violations will be addressed through appropriate legal channels. All service members are reminded that they have a legal obligation under the UCMJ to obey lawful orders, and that orders are presumed to be lawful. A service member's personal philosophy does not justify or excuse the disobedience of an otherwise lawful order. Now, I did see an interesting video from Rob Maness, who is a retired full bird colonel, and he had some interesting things to say. Let's give that a listen.
Hi, friends. This is retired Air Force Colonel Rob Maness of the Rob Maness Show, and I just wanted to speak to the seditious six, but namely to U.S. Senator, retired U.S. Navy Captain Mark Kelly, about their video that they did, which crossed a line. Now, I'm not going to talk about my combat decoration. I'm not going to talk about the fact that I was in the Pentagon on 9/11 or helped with the war on terror or commanded a squadron, but I am going to talk about as a senior officer commander at the full colonel level wielding court martial. And under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Article 94, former retired Captain Kelly could be guilty of sedition because it's defined as creating revolt, violence, or disturbance against lawful civil authority in concert with others with the intent to overthrow or destroy that authority. Where did their video cross the line? Well, it's what it didn't have in it that crossed the line. Look, I have many times recommended that our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and guardians and Coast Guardsmen not obey unlawful orders in the context of what I thought was an unlawful order, namely recently the COVID vaccine order that was deemed unlawful by the current Secretary of War and his staff, and it was unlawfully implemented. This crowd, Senator Kelly, who is their leader, didn't specify an order. That means their video is a call to mass insubordination, the destruction of the authority of the commander in chief and those appointed by him to lead the armed forces of the United States. It is against the law, both civilian and military, to encourage mass insubordination for the lawful orders of the President of the United States. They have recently been questioned as to what the unlawful order was and can't name one. Look, folks, in Congress especially, you need to take action here. And I'm glad to see Secretary of War Hegseth investigate retired U.S. Navy Captain Mark Kelly for his actions. They are despicable. That was my first thought, and I saw that in Secretary Hegseth's tweet about it. They're despicable because the young men and women, especially the youngest, while they are trained not to obey unlawful orders, they are also told that just because they disagree with an order doesn't make it unlawful. And that's what this seditious six people are doing, is encouraging massive subordination based on their political beliefs or their opinions that something they are told to do by this president, the commander in chief, and their officers appointed over them is illegal because they think it is, instead of knowing that it's unlawful, like the COVID-19 vaccine or the My Lai order to kill civilians by the lieutenant that was there. Obviously, those were unlawful orders. You should not follow them. But nothing this president has done has been an unlawful order, and the seditious six failed to name one. They should all be investigated under the appropriate laws, but especially retired U.S. Navy Captain Mark Kelly. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Now, the full response from Senator Mark Kelly, I'll read that to you so you can see what he said in response to defend himself. He said, "When I was 22 years old, I commissioned as an ensign in the U.S. Navy and swore an oath to the Constitution. I upheld that oath through flight school, multiple deployments on the USS Midway, 39 combat missions in Operation Desert Storm, test pilot school, 4 space shuttle flights at NASA, and every day since I retired, which I did after my wife, Gabby, was shot in the head while serving her constituents. In combat, I had a missile blow up next to my jet and flew through anti-aircraft fire to drop bombs on enemy targets. At NASA, I launched on a rocket, commanded the space shuttle, and was part of the recovery mission that brought home the bodies of my astronaut classmates who died on Columbia. I did all of this in service to this country that I love and has given me so much." Secretary Hegseth's tweet is the first I've heard of this. I also saw the president's post saying I should be arrested, hanged, and put to death. If this is meant to intimidate me and other members of Congress from doing our jobs and holding this administration accountable, it won't work. I've given too much to this country to be silenced by bullies who care more about their own power than protecting the Constitution. So there's been so much widespread polarizing comments about this. So I'll go through some people that are supporting this, and then I'll go through some people that are not supporting this. That way you can see what people are saying and make the decision for yourself. Again, I'm not trying to tell you how to feel. So one user on X called J Dunlap 1974, his name's Josh Dunlap, he said, quote, "Pete Hegseth is considering to call Mark Kelly back to active duty as the first step to a court-martial." And then he starts replying saying, "Lock him up," and starts sharing Hegseth memes. Another individual named Eric Dahl priority. He said, quote, massive FAFO. He cooked himself. And he also reposted some overseas Republican groups calling it, quote, sedition. And then the account War Clandestine said, quote, White House supports investigating Mark Kelly. Dems don't like the election result. Doesn't mean they get to break chain of command, end quote. And he has some reposts from some conservative influencers. And there's a few others. I mean, there's a lot of other folks that were showing support about it. A guy by the name of Ian Yeager, with the handle Ian Yeager 29 says, quote, Senator Mark Kelly was the same man who started a spy balloon company funded by China. Now he's telling our troops to disobey illegal orders from the president. This is unacceptable behavior from a sitting U.S. senator. Anyway, there's a whole bunch of people that are super for an investigation on this. Now, some of the opposition, a guy by the name of Ryan Sheed, who is a veteran as well, said, quote, I stand with Captain Mark Kelly. Coming after him will not end well for Trump and Hegseth, end quote. Another person named Viva America Alan On Track says, Mark Kelly must be recalled. OpenEye Comms. Mike Alderson, FRSA, says he shared a Reuters article saying, quote, noting it was a message to purged Pentagon officials, who replies calling it fascism in uniform. Some of the more neutral outlets that I've seen was Reuters was talking about it, saying Pentagon says Senator Kelly could be recalled, facing court martials. The New York Post actually posted an article that was calling it with the title Trump Derangement Sedition. Interesting. I'd say one person that has been very supportive of Senator Kelly was a Senator Ruben Gallego, who's an Iraq war veteran. He was also a 0311 and 0341 in the USMC. And he said, quote, this investigation is just another pathetic attempt to distract from all of the president's failings. He and Hegseth are cowards. And that's coming straight from Senator Gallego.
We're not going to be intimidated. This is just an act by a very desperate, cowardly man who's trying to distract from everything that's going wrong in his life, and he's trying to attack a patriot that has served his country honorably and still does.
What would you say directly to Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, of course renamed the Secretary of War, about this issue?
Well, I think number one, you will never, ever, ever even be half the man that Senator Kelly is. You, sir, are a coward. And the fact that you are following this order from the president shows how big of a coward you are. And I can't wait till you no longer are the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, Senator Gallego seems to be one of the more supportive individuals. He also, not long after that, reposted a post from the president and just basically quoted it and just said, Epstein, Epstein, Epstein. Now, Sergeant Dakota Meyer went on the Laura Ingraham show on Fox News. He had a lot to say about it. He's been a little bit more supportive of the investigation. I don't think he's really called for the investigation. I think he's just saying that the posting of this video was terrible. He made a post on X about it saying, quote, this is catastrophic. Democrats are trying to sow doubt in the one group that cannot operate with doubt, our men and women in uniform. They can't point to a single unlawful order. It's another manufactured narrative that puts our service members at risk. Here's a clip from that interview with Laura Ingraham.
This is catastrophic. This is the political equivalent to yelling fire in a crowded theater. While you might be able to skirt the legalities of it, which you know this was orchestrated and thought out and strategized, you sit here and you can't argue the intent of it, as you're seeing them not be able to argue or be able to bring up one thing that's unlawful. And when you look at this in context, as far as they've been trying to call all these things they didn't agree with, you know, as far as the Venezuela strikes or as far as the strikes on the drug boats, you know, as far as the National Guard deployment, all these aspects that have been coming, you know, they're just trying to sow seeds of doubt into the one demographic of humans that there can be no doubt in the job that we ask them as Americans to do.
Overall, like I said, I don't know if this is something that they're even capable of doing. I don't think they've ever recalled a retiree to active duty to court-martial them. It would be a huge legal hurdle. I would say, like, the veteran community has been super divided on this. I mean, basically anybody that's a registered Democrat's been coming to his defense, and anybody that's a registered Republican's been coming on the offense against him. Again, I don't know what the legalities of this is. I'm not a JAG. I don't know, like, if they can actually do this. Some people seem to think they can, but whether or not they actually will, it may just be political theater. I don't know for sure. I'd like to know what everyone else thinks, though. Do you guys think that they're going to follow through with this? Do you think that they're just doing this to create buzz? You know, with the level of polarization in this country, it's hard for me to like tell what's happening, because sometimes it's tough to tell the difference between intention and, you know, just trying to drive narratives. So it's very divided, like what you would imagine anything would be in this day and age. All right, guys, that's it for the daily roll up for today. I appreciate you watching the video all the way through. Believe it or not, it does actually help support the channel when you do that, because what it does is it tells YouTube that, hey, this is a good video and you should recommend it to other people. So thank you so much for watching. Another way you can support the channel is you can like this video, you can leave a comment in the comment section below, or you can share this video with your friends. So thanks so much for watching, guys. And as always, we will see you in the next video.